Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks for being with us, taking us kind of behind the scenes, behind the bleachers, if you will. Let's start with the title Black Ball. A lot of thought went into that.
Yeah, it's kind of getting at two meanings behind the title Black Ball, literally the transformation of professional basketball in the 1970s. It went from a sport in the late 60s that had informal racial quotas to being a sport that was 75% plus African American, so a massive demographic shift. So in that way, basketball became black ball. And also, too, it's got that other underlying meaning about the blackballing of black players. So the exclusion of black players, for example, like the great Connie Hawkins, who was unjustly accused of being involved in a gambling or game fixing scandal and was essentially kept out of the league unfairly for many years and ended up having to sue to get access to an NBA career.
You know, a lot of us look at sports as just entertainment, but when you look back at it, how many times it was a reflection of what was happening in the country, but also, you know, we had our civil rights protests and all of those things, which helped to move the ball forward, no pun intended, but sports really helped to do that even quicker in some ways.
Yeah, I mean, if we look at somebody like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who's, part of the subtitle of the book, massive star. When I was growing up, I encountered him in the 80s. That was sort of my era. I had no idea that Kareem Abdul-Jabbar had this much longer history of being a Black athletic activist when he was with UCLA as a college player. And then subsequently, when he joined the league, he was somebody who modeled Black authenticity. He was just authentically himself, both Muslim and also African American, celebrated Black culture, didn't necessarily kind of follow the traditional scripts of being submissive and always happy with white reporters. And I think modeled a different kind of Black manhood through the lens of basketball and became a massive hero, but also too was demonized by a lot of white reporters and white media.
One of the other things that pushed the ball forward was competition of a different kind. The ABA, the American Basketball Association, came along, and that forced the NBA to look at some things.
Absolutely. The ABA is so crucial to the transformation of the NBA in this period because before the ABA, the American Basketball Association, there was no competition for the NBA. So they basically had a monopoly stronghold on basketball. Once the ABA came into being, they were looking for talent and they weren't afraid to go to unconventional places to find that talent, to go to HBCUs, for example, to find Black players who were, sort of tucked away in semi-professional leagues. And they, in a lot of ways, transformed the style of play. The NBA wasn't really into quote unquote playground basketball, which is the style of play that Black players like Dr. J and others, Julius Erving, the dunking, the trick dribbling, the trick passes, the improvisation. It's almost like they were playing jazz on the court through basketball. That wasn't initially embraced by white fans and the white media. And in fact, it was Black players who really instituted the style that we associate with the NBA today.
Yeah, the slam dunk contest, and all of a sudden Fisher Price was making the little, basketball thing so you could have your future basketball player there. And then we saw these different level of superstars, your Magic Johnsons, Michael Jordan, when all of a sudden it was all the endorsements, the shoes, all of that.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that is the irony in all of this. Spencer Haywood, Connie Hawkins, Oscar Robertson, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Julius Erving, all of those guys really set the stage for Magic Johnson and his rivalry with Larry Bird. But for some reason, they've been swept under the rug in terms of NBA history. And it's almost as if the NBA became the NBA in the 1980s. And it did in a certain way, but the guys from the earlier generation really set the mold. And in the 1980s, David Stern, who was the commissioner at that time, figured out that rather than shying away from the blackness of the league, that this also could be a way to sell basketball as a product to the rest of America. And we've seen how, basketball has been transformed into not just an American sport, but also a global brand. So
Yeah.
it's really quite the story of just expansion, and all on the backs of Black joy, Black improvisation, Black style.
We were talking to Clyde Drexler and Rudy Tomjanovich about the Olympic team, and you talk about being broadcast to over 200 countries. They said when they went into practice, all the other countries' teams were coming up saying, "Can we just get an autograph? Can we just get a picture?" And so there was something different about that American team.
Absolutely. I mean, and I think that the brand of American basketball, with the incredible one-on-one play, with the virtuosity in terms of dribbling and passing, and those amazing feats in terms of slam dunks, the trash talking, just the swagger. I mean, that is quintessential American basketball, and all of that comes out of African American culture.
Yeah, let me reflect my friend Dikembe Mutombo. Not in my house, right? So the finger swag. When it's all said and done, I know it's kind of hard to wrap it all up. Give us kind of a quote of what sports really means in our nation, in our society, in our communities, because I think, I say this all the time, we're always at odds between academia and sports. You can't have both. You can have both, but sometimes it's important to have both of them intertwined together.
Well, I don't think it's a zero-sum game. I think that, it's just as important to exercise the body as it is to exercise the mind. And one of the things that I discovered through my research was just how much thinking the players did about their situation, about the business of the league, about the industry, about, how teams should be marketed, et cetera. But the catch was nobody was actually concerned about what they thought. Nobody was listening to them. So I think it's important for us to understand that athletes are people, they have thoughts, and that we shouldn't just expect them to shut up and play, because in fact, sports are a reflection of society. And so if we see racism out there in the world, it's also something that suffuses our sports industries, and it's not just an escape. It's American culture writ large.
Yeah. Dr. Runstedtler, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thanks so much for having me.
All right, the book again is called Black Ball. It's available wherever books are sold.